Hidden among the misty landscapes of northern Japan, there is a mystery that official history has been unable to erase. An ancient people with light skin and features that appear European. Who were the Ainu really? A forgotten Asian tribe, or the last vestiges of a lost civilization that predates the Japanese? For centuries, the Ainu lived in isolation among the forests of Hokkaido and the Kuril Islands, but their traces were almost erased. An aboriginal people of Japan before the Yayoi migrations that formed the current Japanese population. Today, we will explore the hidden origins of the Ainu people, their enigmatic culture, and their struggle to survive the marginalization imposed by the Japanese Empire. A journey to the heart of a legacy that challenges everything we think we know about the history of Asia. The Japanese are reluctant to admit that the Ainu are the aboriginal inhabitants of their islands. They prefer to believe that the sun goddess Amaterasu created the land expressly for them. They are also bothered by the Ainu being classified as Caucasians, members of the barbaric white race inhabiting Europe. In contrast to the yellow-skinned Mongoloid Asians, the Ainu are light-skinned with the characteristic long Caucasoid head, square face, and stocky, hairy body. They are no hairier than Europeans. They lack the Mongoloid eye crease and describe their own people as of the same eye socket. Carlton Kuhn, the American anthropologist and authority on the races of man, stood next to an Ainu and observed that except for the Ainu's wider set eyes and the low bridge of his nose, the two could have been brothers. How the ancestors of the Ainu arrived in Japan is one of the mysteries of immigration that archaeology alone has little chance of solving. When the Yayoi, the ancestors of the Japanese, invaded the islands around 300 AD, they encountered an older people they called the Amishi, the barbarians. These Ainu, a word meaning man, were simple hunters and fishermen. They were forced to retreat northward, and the Japanese applied unrelenting and increasing pressure as their agricultural and pastoral population expanded. Settled farming and animal husbandry gave them irresistible superiority over the primitive foragers. A report submitted to the emperor in 805 refers to the drain on the treasury caused by constant fighting with the Ainu. The document specified that they gathered like ants but dispersed like birds. Even then, the Japanese were reluctant to accept the indigenous origin of the Ainu. When a large number of arrowheads were found on a beach in 839, their presence was attributed not to the long existence of the despised Aborigines, but to a flock of geese that had carried the arrows on their bodies from the mainland, where they had been attacked by the Mongols. The Ainu, displaced to the colder islands of Hokkaido and Sakhalin, retained their independence until 1799, when those islands were colonized by the Japanese to prevent Russian aggression. The Ainu were accorded a humble status and treated as inferiors until the 20th century, when many had already been assimilated or intermarried with the Japanese. About 14,000 pure Ainu live in small villages on the coast of Hokkaido. Other peoples of a similar racial variety populate the Kuril and Aleutian Islands to the north, and still others in the Amur River Basin in Manchuria. These Ainu people may have migrated from the west in remote antiquity. One theory suggests that East Asia was populated by Caucasians before the arrival of the Mongoloids. Another theory explains the legend of white, bearded men in Mexico and Peru due to the crossing of the Bering Strait by the Ainu during the Mongoloid invasion, which populated the American continents shortly before or after the last ice age. This theory received some support from the discovery in 1958, off the coast of Ecuador, of pottery with a design similar to that made by the ancestors of the Ainu. The modern Ainu have no traditions relating to migration from an original homeland. None of their customs or ideas reflect typical Caucasian spiritual beliefs or values. The Ainu appear to have lived in Japan since 3000 BC, a date attributed to the most primitive forms of the Jomon culture, as it is known. The term derives from the corded design found on pottery, excavated from ancient habitations. This design was achieved by pressing soft, unfired clay with small sticks or rollers over which tightly braided cord had been woven. Or perhaps the vessels were placed in woven baskets that were fired during firing. This is a distinct design, not used by any primitive people except the Ainu, who, at least until the 19th century, employed it in carving wooden ornaments and weaving. This is not the only link between the Ainu and the primitive culture that existed in Neolithic times. The Ainu sunk their houses several feet below the ground, dug post holes, and built sloping roofs that rose to a peak, exactly as the Ainu did until recent times, when they abandoned the sunken ground and replaced it with stone slabs and open hearths. The Jomon built large mounds of shells, the remains of their food, another Ainu characteristic derived from their fishing industry. Animal bones, spearheads, harpoons, fishhooks, and stone axes identify the Jomon as simple hunters and fishermen who, like the primitive Ainu, created a rudimentary social organization. The discovery of carved stone staffs, emblems of authority, suggests that they were ruled by chiefs or family headsmen. The presence in their early graves of small female figures, possibly representing a mother goddess, indicates their reverence for a fertility cult. The absence of funerary artifacts and organized cemeteries indicates the lack of a cult of the dead, which the Ainu developed. The divergences between the skeletal remains of Jomon and early Ainu, perhaps due to intermixture with related peoples from remote islands, are not considered by archaeologists to be an obstacle to revealing Jomon and Ainu cultures. Whoever the Jomon were, they appear to have replaced an even earlier, unknown race, which left primitive elements beneath the layers of volcanic ash that cover much of the Tokyo region, caused by the frequent eruptions of Mount Fuji. Who used bronze tools and made weapons, bear no resemblance to the much earlier Neolithic Jomon culture. Christian missionaries who visited them in the late 19th century described the Ainu as content to follow the ancient paths and indifferent to the higher standards of economic and cultural life of their Japanese neighbors. They were happy to hunt and fish, to preserve life and worship their gods. They rarely lacked food. The land and sea provided for their simple needs. They were expert fishermen, netting trout and salmon and spearing sea fish from their canoes. They trained their dogs to swim a short distance offshore, divided into two groups and in a single file. A shout from the shore would cause them to converge in a crescent formation, catching the fish and forcing it to come closer to the shore where they could be caught. They collected many varieties of crustaceans and hunted whales and walruses. Like the Arctic Eskimos, the Ainu invented a detachable bow held by a rope that would snap apart upon impact. With it, they prevented the fish from escaping. They hunted with guns and arrows and imitated the cry of a wounded animal to delay the escape of the rest of the deer herd and to attract them closer. They built traps in pits to catch unwary beasts. To detect a hibernating bear, they observed the telltale yellow discoloration of the snow caused by the sleeping animal's breath. A hunter would creep into the den carrying only a stone knife and his head protected with fur. His task was to draw the bear out, which was awaited by the other hunters. The young bear cubs were taken home, where they were raised for the sacrificial ceremony, the occasion of the great annual festival, when these animals were killed to serve as messengers to the gods to assure them of the Ainu's devotion and thus counteract adverse rumors carried by other animals. The Ainu believed in the existence of spirits who descended in a hierarchy from the supreme god, creator of life. Their religion was not formalized. There were no Ainu priests, only sorcerers who practiced magic. Although they believed in reincarnation after death, the Ainu had no clear idea of rewards and punishments. Every human being was afflicted by demons who were personified by dwarves, the oldest inhabitants of the earth. Even the most fanatical missionaries found no evil in the Ainu religion. They observed the high standards of morality and justice of that people. Transgressors of customary conduct were judged by a council of elders who considered each case carefully. A man could be required to prove his innocence by removing a stone from a vat of boiling water or an ember from a burning fire. Burned skin betrayed his guilt, a form of trial practiced in medieval Europe. The guilty person was never put to death. He could be fined, beaten, or expelled from the community, depending on the nature of his offense. The Ainu followed etiquette. Inside the house, a single, undivided room about 6 meters long, each person had their assigned space. The guest of honor, next to the wall farthest from the door, the less important guest closest to the entrance, and the husband and wife next to the hearth. There was no furniture. Everyone sat or lay on mats. By the mid-19th century, the Ainu had adopted the custom of the kimono as common attire. Their fiber garments were reserved for ceremonial occasions. Women wore ankle-length gowns. A man could marry as many wives as he could support. Having several wives was considered proof of virility. The Ainu had no written language. Their language is very different from all others, making it impossible to classify them. Like their customs, it provides no clue as to the origins of the people. Before the arrival of the Japanese, the Ainu lived in comparative isolation and had little contact with other people. They were content with their hard life, their daily struggle for survival, their dreary, cold, and drafty homes. Missionaries found them depressed by the advance of civilization. One Ainu told the Venerable Dr. John Batchelor, "Our fathers lived peaceful lives without worry or anxiety. They lived with great contentment and general happiness, but now everything has changed and the struggle for existence is destroying us."